Isaac Newton said, "If I've seen further than others, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants." And I'm thankful and I'm grateful that I get to stand on my dad's shoulders. And in some small way, after my talk today, maybe you can stand on his shoulders too. If you lost someone you loved, just think of this. They're always with you in your heart and in your head when you think of them. And I think of my dad a lot. I love you, Dad.
As a Genius Network member, you know a great idea when you see it or hear it. The question is, where can you get even more of these great ideas? That's where a mentor or a guide comes in. A mentor is somebody who has gone before you and has been where you want to go, a guide by your side. You've had mentors in the past and you're going to have mentors in the future, especially if you want to keep progressing. A wise mentor can give you insights that you may have never heard or experienced before. In the next 10-minute talk by Jim Dew, you're going to hear about his mentor and guide, Dr. Phil. No, not the Dr. Phil from television. This is another Dr. Phil who grew up poor in Ohio, volunteered to join the Army at age 17, and ended up serving in a medical unit in a combat zone in the South Pacific during World War II. After the war, using the GI Bill, he became a doctor and a pediatrician. In 1955, he moved to Tucson, Arizona with his wife, Jean, and their son, David, and began his practice there. Two more sons were to come, named Thomas and James. Over many years, he was a key community leader and helped thousands of young people have an even better life by being healthy and therefore happy. He shared his wisdom and his life lessons with many people, especially his sons. Yes, you've already figured out James, the youngest, is our own Jim Dew. If you don't know Jim, he's Mimi's husband. Jim and Mimi's wealth management firm builds virtual family offices for elite entrepreneurs, many of whom are in Genius Network, including Joe Polish. Jim has been Joe's personal financial advisor for over 20 years. This is going to be a very different message than what we've heard Jim talk about in the past, because it has nothing to do with your money or finances. It has to do with your life and how you live your life. Jim's title is 5 Life Lessons. Please help me welcome Mr. Jim Dew.
Thank you, Timothy. I appreciate that. And yes, I lost my father, my dad, a month ago. Today, I'm going to share with you 5 ways my dad lived his life that can help you live an even better one. The first way my dad lived his life is my dad would hustle. So I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and we lived on a busy street with lots of cars cruising by. And my parents, years before, had planted this big hedge to drown out some of the noise from the cars. And my dad would get the idea to trim the hedge every few months, but he wouldn't tell me and my brother. He would just wake us up at 5 in the morning on a Saturday after, as teenagers, we were out a little too late the night before, and he'd come down the hall banging on the bedroom doors. "Let's go, troops, everybody up, let's go, we're trimming the hedge today." My brother and I would stumble out in the front yard, weary-eyed, ready for the all-day endeavor of trimming the hedge. You have to picture this. To trim the hedge, my dad would wear Bermuda shorts, a white tank top undershirt, white tube socks with red, white, and blue stripes pulled up to his knees, and a red, white, and blue headband. And all day he'd stand out there on the ladder trimming the hedge with all these cars flying by. And my brother Tom and I knew on Monday it was going to be awful because we're going to get all this grief from our friends about how dad was dressed working on the hedge. I don't know if you ever had a mom or a dad who embarrassed you, but it was pretty embarrassing for us. But my dad hustled, whether it was trimming the hedge or taking care of his patients in his medical practice, he hustled. And I learned that from my dad. I hustled my way to playing college basketball at 5'9". I hustled my way to build our business with Mimi over the last 22 years. Can you hustle a little bit more in parts of your life? The second way my dad lived his life is he took care of his team. So as Timothy mentioned, he was in the South Pacific in a combat zone during World War II. He went over as an X-ray technician. He worked his way up to the rank of sergeant, and he ended up scrubbing in on the meatball surgeries, helping save the lives of the soldiers over there in the South Pacific. One high-ranking surgeon, a lieutenant colonel, actually took a liking to my dad, so he would have my dad scrub in on all his surgeries. The war ended, and even though the war ended, there were still a lot of surgeries because of booby traps and skirmishes with the Japanese, because a lot of the Japanese didn't know the war was over. They didn't have smartphones in those days. So there were still a lot of surgeries, and my dad was doing that. Well, his unit decided to throw a party. So they sent a private off to get alcohol. And unfortunately, when the captain called the unit together and asked my dad, all present and accounted for, the private wasn't back. My dad knew what would happen to that private if he told the truth, so he fibbed. And he said, yes, sir. Well, the captain figured out that my dad had not told the truth. And this was a by-the-book military man. So even though the war was over, he decided to court-martial my dad. The next day, my dad's scrubbing into surgery with a lieutenant colonel. He said, sir, this may be the last day I scrub in with you. And the lieutenant colonel said, what are you talking about? He said, well, the captain is court-martialing me. The lieutenant colonel screams across the medical tent, bring me the phone. And they come over with the crank phone. Get me the captain on the horn. They get the captain on the horn, hand the phone to the lieutenant colonel. Lieutenant colonel says, what is this I hear about you trying to court-martial Sergeant Dew? Cut it out. I need him in surgery, damn it. And slammed down the phone. And that was the end of the attempted court-martial of my dad. But whether it was in World War II or in his medical practice, my dad always took care of his team. And now in our wealth planning business, we're up to 10 on our team. And Mimi and I both know we have to take care of our team. Can you take a little bit better care of your team? The third way my dad lived his life is he was disciplined. So when he retired, he got really into health and fitness. And just to give you an example, his cardiovascular routine was 3 days a week for exactly 32 minutes in an exact heart zone. He would have 1 glass of red wine a night, not 1 1/4, not 1 1/2, never 2, always exactly 1. My dad lived with discipline. And I learned that from my dad. I work out 6 days a week and I almost never miss. Could you use a little bit more discipline in your life?
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video, and I want to let you know that I have a new book that's come out, and if you'd like to get it absolutely free, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait till the end of this video, or you can simply go to joesfreebook.com and you can get a copy there.
The fourth thing my dad did in living his life is my dad was careful with money. So when I was 16, I had the privilege of driving the family's 1972 Chevy Impala. And it was brown and it was ugly. It was an old beater, but I was grateful to have it. Our cars sat out in the sun because we didn't have a garage. We didn't have a carport. And after a while, the sun cracked the dashboard on the Impala in many places. So my dad took it down to the dealership to get a quote. My dad did not like the quote from the dealership. 2 weeks later, he comes into the house, very excited, and he says to me, I fixed the Impala. I said, what do you mean, Dad? You fixed the Impala? Yeah, the dashboard. I fixed the dashboard in the Impala. That always scared us because my dad was not good at fixing things. So quickly, I ran out to the car to see what had happened. And sure enough, my dad had fixed the dashboard on the Chevy Impala. What he did is he went down to the carpet store, bought a piece of shag carpet, and he super glued it on the dashboard. What my dad didn't know is when I was going to high school in Tucson, Arizona in the 1980s, there were a lot of Hispanic and Latino kids would create these lowriders. So they would take cars like Chevy Impalas, drop them low, they'd hang dice in the rearview mirror, and they would put carpet glued on the dashboard. So I got harassed all the time in high school for trying to be a lowrider, even though I didn't look like a lowrider. So that was a lot of grief my dad brought on with me. But my dad was careful with money. And I learned that from my dad. So every December, Mimi and I ask ourselves a simple question. How much more are we going to save and invest in the coming year than we did in the last year? And that one question has made all the difference. Could you be a little bit more careful with your money? And the fifth way my dad lived his life is he was the best at what he did. About 12 years ago, Mimi and I were at a memorial for a friend who unfortunately had passed away. And I bumped into an old friend of mine, Larry Seal. And Larry said, you have to come meet my mom because your dad was my pediatrician and he was my brother's pediatrician. So he walks me over to his mother and he says to his mom, Mom, this is Jim, Dr. Dew's son. She gives me this huge bear hug and she holds me for what seems like 2 minutes. She lets me go and she has tears in her eyes. And she looks deep into my eyes and she says to me, your father saved my son's life. And I said, this goofball Larry? And she said, no, my other son. It turns out my dad had diagnosed something that was very rare and very hard to diagnose. And he caught it very early. And that saved her son's life. And as I think about my dad's legacy and all the kids he saved and the kids those kids had and the kids those kids are going to have, it's hard to measure the impact he's had on the world. When I think about my dad, I think about being the best financial advisor I can be, being the best husband I can be. Can you be a little bit better at some of the things that you do? So my dad's 5 life lessons. Number 1, hustle. Number 2, take care of your team. Number 3, live with discipline. Number 4, be careful with money. And number 5, be the best at what you do. Isaac Newton said, if I've seen further than others, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. And I'm thankful and I'm grateful that I get to stand on my dad's shoulders. And in some small way, after my talk today, maybe you can stand on his shoulders too. If you lost someone you loved, just think of this. They're always with you in your heart and in your head when you think of them. And I think of my dad a lot. I love you, Dad. Kathy.
You might want to stick around. There might be people that want to talk to you.
Okay.
So, Gina, since you have mad skills, if you could throw those, because I know Jim didn't create a handout, but when I think about what Jim just went through with us, every single one of those words and ideas, maybe not one of those was new, but how many of those are we implementing on a daily or a weekly or monthly basis? Where do we lack that we could throw one of those in? So I tried to catch these. Tell me if I got them. And Gina, maybe you can put those in the chat for us. She did. She did. Did she already? Oh, Gina, you're so good. So hustle, care for your team, discipline, be careful with money, and be the best. How'd they do?
Beautiful.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. Any questions for Jim? Any shares or feedback? Oh, come on up, Alex. What we just did? All right.
Come up here, Alex. Come up here.
Come on, Alex.
Come on, give me some emotional
Help me
support.
out.
I love when you weep. Hi, everybody. I'm Alex. The best part of your talk were the questions in between each point, because now it wasn't just about you and your dad. You were asking us through a question mark how we can apply it. And there were like 5 Velcro hooks with each of those. And then you summarized it. I'd love to see what Joel's going to say about it, but that was the best speech I've seen you give.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice. Stick around. Jim's good for a good speech about, sorry, I'm not Joe. I can't make a bad joke. And I'm not you. I can't make a bad joke. All right. So anyone else have anything else they want to put into the chat? Because if not, we will keep going.
Yes.
Yeah. Joe.
Tell him how old Dad was.
95. My dad was 95. He lived a great life. We were lucky we had him as long as we did.
And there's the proof of those principles and what it made a difference. And he was contributing all along. So congratulations, Jim. That was great. I agree with Alex. That was your best talk ever.
Thank you. Thank you.
I got more feedback tonight, but that's good.
Yeah.
So
To make it even better.
perfect. It's interesting that Barbara wrote this in the chat. What does it mean to hustle? Because for each one of us, that word hustle is going to mean something individual.
Mm-hmm.
From your perspective, what do you think it meant for your dad to hustle?
And this is going to sound maybe not the right word, but it's almost like this impatience to get stuff done. And impatience is not a good thing. It's like the cousin to anger. But if you feel that impatience, that's what I mean a little bit. Like, let's get on with it. Let's make something happen. And as entrepreneurs, you're the masters of that. A sense of urgency.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's exactly what Leora just put in the chat. Those were the words coming to my
Yeah.
mind. A sense of urgency, speed of implementation, grit. Those are good.
Yeah, my dad loved hustle and rewarded that emotionally. As boys, we wanted our dad to be proud of us. And any of us who hustled at anything, even if we were terrible at it, we got a lot of praise from our dad. He loved hustle. And so we hustled. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
The things that shape us, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Can I go now?
Yes, you can go now.
Okay, I hope you found that video awesome and useful. So if you want to get a free copy of my book, I want you to click here. And if you want to watch some more videos that'll be useful and awesome, click here. Go ahead. They're over here. Do it now. Come on. Thank you. Watch them.